Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's hearing titled VA Construction Policy, Failed Plans Result in Plans That Fail. I ask unanimous consent that several of our colleagues from the committee join us at the dais today to hear about construction developments affecting facilities that serve their constituents. Hearing no objection, so ordered. Providing veterans medical care is a core function of the VA. When the VA does health care right, it can be second to none. However, the process VA employs to build its health care facilities is abysmal, and the results lead to delays for much needed care to veterans. The Government Accountability Office's recent report noted that VA's 4 largest medical center construction projects have had an average of cost increase of $366 million and an average delay of 35 months. One of the most distressing items in the VA report is that VA failed to learn from its mistakes, and it went from project to project. I must add that many of these same issues have been identified by GAO in the past, and we seem to be no closer to a better result. Ultimately, it is not just major facilities that epitomize why VA's construction policy is a debacle. A little more than a year ago, this subcommittee held a hearing on VA's failure to perform due diligence and failure to inform Congress of project increases regarding the proposed clinic in Savannah, Georgia. Based on subsequent correspondence with VA over the past year, I am not quite certain VA is getting the message that its construction program is dysfunctional and not in keeping with industry best practices or veterans' expectations. Not only is VA building facilities over budget and late, but it is also failing to pay the contractors for the work in a timely manner. While ensuring taxpayer dollars are properly spent is of utmost importance, VA must pay its bills on time. Last week I visited the Denver project and spoke directly with VA about prompt payment to contractors and subcontractors, and was alarmed by VA's response in the issue, and I will monitor their commitment to improving the process. Under the Prompt Payment Act and OMB's guidance, a federal agency is expected to, quote, to ensure that prime contractors disperse the funds that they receive from the federal government to their small business subcontractors in a prompt manner, unquote. The Prompt Payment Act also requires that the contractor certify that his or her subcontractors are receiving payment commensurate with the work performed. But as evidence shows, some contractors and subcontractors in these 4 projects have been waiting for months to be paid. Moreover, the Small Business Act explains that it is, quote, the policy of the United States that prime contractors establish procedures to ensure the timely payment of amounts due pursuant to the terms of their subcontracts with small business concerns, unquote. VA's failure to abide by the laws governing payment to its contractors is unacceptable and is a problem in need of an immediate fix. Given the number and variety of facilities VA has built over the last several years, it is disturbing to me that VA continues to employ policies and techniques that have repeatedly fallen short. I look forward to hearing from today's witnesses regarding VA's construction policies and how we can move forward to effectively and efficiently build medical facilities for our veterans. I now yield to Ranking Member Kirkpatrick for her opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing. The focus on the construction program of the Department of Veterans Affairs is one that needs to remain a top priority for this subcommittee and necessary to ensure the veterans' needs are being met. Hundreds of millions of dollars are authorized and appropriated every fiscal year to ensure that veterans are cared for in the safest, most state-of-the-art buildings to be built. The other priority, of course, is that along with the building, there is in place quality and timely health care delivery to those who have earned it. Today's hearing focuses on a recently released government accountability report on construction that is very concerning. GAO reports that some of the biggest construction projects have increased in cost by over 140%, while others have experienced delays in construction for up to 74 months. While I may understand the reasons for some of this, clearly there is a need for VA to scrutinize their construction program processes and make improvements where it may be necessary to do so. I understand that just a few years ago, the VA put in place the Strategic Capital Investment Process, or SCIP. I look forward to hearing from the VA about how this process is working. Additionally, the subcommittee has been informed that the Secretary, in an effort to improve the construction process, created a Construction Review Council to serve as the single point of oversight and performance accountability for the planning, budgeting, execution, and delivery of the VA Real Property Capital Asset Program. I look forward to hearing from the VA on how this council's report has been beneficial to the VA. This committee has held numerous hearings on the VA's construction process, and efforts have been made to improve and streamline construction projects. Having said that, I also believe the VA still struggles to effectively manage the program. From the capital asset realignment for enhanced services to the recently implemented SCIP, problems and challenges remain. Mr. Chairman, I stand ready to work with my colleagues and with the VA as we tackle these issues in front of us today. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Kirkpatrick. I would now like to welcome the panel to the witness table, which you are there. On this panel, we will hear from, let's see, how do you pronounce it? Lorelei, did I say that right? Lorelei St. James, Director of Physical Infrastructure Issues for the Government Accountability Office. Raymond Kelly, Director of Legislative Services for the Veterans of Foreign Wars. Mr. Glenn Hagstrom, Principal Executive Director, Office of Acquisition, Logistics, and Construction for the Department of Veterans Affairs, and accompanying Mr. Hagstrom, Ms. Stella Fiotes, Executive Director, Construction and Facilities Management, Office of Acquisition, Logistics, and Construction for the Department of Veterans Affairs. Ms. St. James, you are now recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Kaufman, Ranking Member Kirkpatrick, and members of the subcommittee, I am pleased to be here today to discuss VA's construction of major medical facilities and actions it should take to decrease the time and cost of these projects. My testimony today is based on our report published a few days ago. VA has an important mission of caring for over 6 million veterans. Right now, VA has 50 major medical facilities that it's either building or renovating at a cost of more than $12 billion. This is a huge undertaking, since before the Las Vegas facility was constructed, VA had not built a project of this size in over 15 years. GAO has reviewed VA's approach to planning and building major medical facilities. These are facilities that cost about or over $10 million. VA, however, has struggled to match its aging infrastructure with the changing needs of veterans. It must also contend with a wide array of stakeholders, including Congress and veterans organizations. In our report, we found problems around 2 fundamental construction issues, time and money. But to be fair, most construction projects, private or public, change from design to opening day. And events, sometimes beyond anyone's control, can easily add time and money. Even given this, for the VA facilities we reviewed, we remain concerned about the amount of time and the amount of cost increases from the time projects are destined to be finished and the time they are expected to be completed. Why is it taking so long to complete these facilities, and why have costs increased so much? These answers are important. Over the next 10 years, VA plans to construct or renovate projects that have an estimated value of over $21 billion. Of the 50 projects in our review, we reviewed in detail 4 major medical facilities in Denver, Orlando, New Orleans, and Las Vegas. So far, Denver is 18% complete, but it's taken 10.5 years from the selection of the design firm to VA's recent estimated completion date. It also experienced a 144% cost increase from the initial cost estimate. In Las Vegas, the project took slightly more than 10 years. In contrast to VA, we found that the Naval Facilities Engineering Command, who builds similar medical facilities under similar regulations, designs and builds such facilities in about 4 years. Similar to Denver, Orlando has experienced a 143% cost increase, and New Orleans a 59% increase. While each facility has unique circumstances, we found several reasons for these increases, including some that were beyond VA's control. For example, due to Hurricane Katrina, construction costs in Las Vegas skyrocketed. In Denver and New Orleans, political pressure, including pressure from some veterans groups, moved VA to change from shared facilities to standalone facilities. In Orlando, the site changed 3 times from 2004 to 2010, once because VA didn't move quick enough to secure needed land. Lastly, unanticipated events such as undetected underground storage tanks, as we saw in New Orleans, can impact estimates. In VA's November 2012 Construction Review Council report, it acknowledged several management problems and stated that among other actions, it would submit initial designs to Congress that were 35% complete, beginning with its 2014 budget submission. These estimates are important. Congress uses them to make funding decisions, and veterans use them to measure when medical services will be available. Lastly, in VA's management of all major facilities, we recommended that VA issue guidance on when to use medical equipment planners, and they should issue procedures to clarify to contractors the roles and responsibilities of all VA personnel involved in projects. They should also streamline its change order process. VA and contractor officials all cited this as a fundamental management problem. VA agreed with our recommendations, and we are encouraged by its planned actions, but believe these actions should be implemented and monitored to ensure that real change occurs. Mr. Chairman, this concludes my statement. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Ms. St. James, thank you so much for your testimony, and I'm going to go ahead and I'll recess the committee for votes, and then we'll reconvene right after voting.
Las Vegas. Las Vegas is most complete. No, that's okay. Vegas is what percent? I saw that table and I was.
So the estimated completion date is June 2014. Orlando, they say July 2013.
Committee is called to order. Mr. Kelly, you are now recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, members of the subcommittee, on behalf of the 2 million members of the Veterans of Foreign Wars and our auxiliary, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I know everyone's heard these statistics, but they are worth repeating. VA's infrastructure is on average 60 years old. Utilization has risen from 80% to 121% in a matter of 6 years. In that same time period, the conditions of those facilities have eroded from 81% to 71%. VA currently holds 50 major construction contracts and has identified a total of 130 major construction projects that need to be addressed, all at a cost of about $25 billion. VA has a monumental task of expanding and replacing its medical facilities, and they must maximize every dollar and implement processes that will expedite the construction process. The VFW has identified 4 major areas that need to be addressed to ensure that construction projects are done in a more efficient and cost-effective manner. First, VA must fully integrate the electronic contracts management system. VA needs to stop using the design bid build contracting practice. Third, VA must adopt a comprehensive facility master plan. And fourth, they should use medical equipment planners during the construction of all medical facilities. Due to time constraints, I will limit my remarks to just 2 of these areas of concern. VA has historically relied on the design bid build project delivery system when entering into contracts to build major facility projects. Of the 50 current VA major facility projects, 43 of them are design bid build. With this model, an architect is selected to design the facility. The design documents are used to secure the bid, and then the successful contract bid holder builds the facility. Design bid build projects often encounter disputes between the consumer, in this case VA, and the construction contractor. Because these contracts are generally firm fixed price based on the completed design, the construction contractor is usually responsible for cost overruns unless VA and the contractor agree on any needed or proposed changes that occur with the change of scope, unforeseen site condition changes, or design error. VA and the contractor negotiate these changes through change orders. This process can become adversarial because neither party wants to absorb the costs associated with the change, and each change order can add months to the project completion date. The flaws of design bid build projects have become apparent, highlighted by the delays in Orlando, Florida, with the new medical facility that has been delayed 39 months, due in part to change order disputes. This contract must be followed through to completion, but VA must use this as a lessons learned and change their contracting model to an architect-led design-build model. A design-build project teams the architect and the construction contractor under one contract. This method can save VA up to 6 months of time by putting the design phase of the construction and the construction performance metric together. Placing the architect as the lead from the start to finish and having the construction contractor work side by side with the architect allows the architect to be an advocate for VA. Also, the architect and the construction contractor can work together early on the design phase to reduce the number of design errors, and it also allows them to identify and modify the building plans throughout the project. The VFW also believes the VA would benefit from the use of medical equipment planners. Using these planners, which is an industry practice used by the Army Corps of Engineers and other federal agencies, places an experienced medical equipment expert at the disposal of the architect and the construction contractor. When used properly, the medical equipment planner can work with the architect during the design phase and then the construction contractor during the build phase to ensure that needed space, physical structure, and electrical support are adequate for the purchased medical equipment, reducing change orders, work stoppages, and the demolition of newly built sections of a facility. Using the Orlando facility as an example again, issues with the purchase of medical equipment caused cost overruns of more than $10 million, and construction had to be suspended until these issues were resolved. Mr. Chairman, this concludes my remarks, and I look forward to any questions you or the committee may have.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Mr. Hagstrom, you are now recognized and have 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Kaufman, Ranking Member Kirkpatrick, distinguished members of the committee. I'm pleased to appear here this afternoon to update the committee on the Department of Veterans Affairs' continuing efforts to improve construction procedures and planning processes to ensure timely execution of major construction projects. Joining me this afternoon from the Office of Acquisition, Logistics, and Construction's Office of Construction and Facilities Management, is Ms. Della Fiotis, the Executive Director. I will provide a brief oral statement and request that my full statement be included in the record. Through the Department's capital asset programs, which include major and minor construction, non-recurring maintenance, and leasing, we are delivering the infrastructures necessary to fulfill our mission to care for and memorialize our nation's veterans. Our continuing goal in the Office of Acquisition, Logistics, and Construction is to improve construction procedures and planning processes to ensure timely execution of major construction and leasing projects to provide state-of-the-art facilities for our veterans. VA continues to make significant improvements in its real property capital asset portfolio. Implemented with the fiscal year 2012 budget, the Strategic Capital Investment Planning Process, or SCIP, is a department-wide planning process to track and prioritize the department's capital investment needs. Using this approach, VA has visibility across its entire property portfolio and is able to synchronize the projects we undertake in our major infrastructure programs to address our most critical needs. Some of the steps that we have taken to improve the management and oversight of major construction projects include implementing the recommendations of the 2009 GAO Report and undertaking the VA Facilities Management Transformation Initiative, or VAFM, which works to improve planning processes, integrate construction and facility operations, and standardize the construction process. Last April, as a follow-on to the VAFM, Secretary Shinseki established the Construction Review Council to serve as a single point of oversight and performance accountability for the planning, budgeting, execution, and management of the Department's Real Property Capital Asset Program. Chaired by the Secretary, the Construction Review Council identified 4 major findings to improve performance. Actions have been identified and are currently being implemented to address these findings. Finally, we are in the process of reviewing the GAO final report, which was released on May the 3rd, 2013, and plan to take immediate actions to implement their recommendations. In the past 5 years, VA has also accomplished and delivered a significant number of projects for veterans. Most recently, in fiscal year 2012 and 2013 to date, VA has delivered nearly $1 billion worth of facilities. This includes 16 medical facilities, including the new Las Vegas Hospital, and 5 new cemeteries or cemetery expansions, the vast majority of which were delivered without construction delay and within the appropriated funds. VA continues to work to complete 52 major construction projects to provide the much-needed facilities for our veterans and their families. I'm pleased to update you that since I last appeared before the committee to brief you on the construction of the new VA Medical Center in Orlando, the project has advanced from approximately 50% completion to approximately 80% completion today. After issuing Brassfield and Gorey a show cause notice in February of 2013, the department has notified them that they will continue as the contractor on the project. They have provided to VA a completion date of April 2014. We will continue to work closely with Brassfield and Gorey to ensure they adhere to their projected timeline. The lessons we have learned from Orlando and other past major construction projects is guiding us in our management of the Denver and New Orleans replacement hospitals and future projects. In closing, VA has a strong history of delivering facilities to accomplish our mission to serve veterans, and we are committed to meeting our responsibility to design, build, and deliver quality facilities to meet the demand for access to health care and benefits. The lessons that we have learned from our past projects will continue to lead to improvements in the management and execution of our capital program as we move forward. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before the committee today, and we look forward to answering any questions the committee may have.
Thank you, Mr. Hagstrom. I'm just going to start with questions. Mr. Hagstrom, the VA has 11 projects with a range of cost increases from 4 to 59%. In all but 2 of these projects, the cost increases are over 10%. Has VA officially informed Congress regarding all of these increases?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know specifically which project you're referencing, but to the best of my knowledge, we are very diligent in notifying the Congress if there are cost overruns, and because of the amount of those costs, we must notify Congress. If you'd provide me a list of those projects, I'd be happy to reply for the record for those.
You know, it's the projects that are listed in the GAO report, the 11 projects listed in the GAO report.
Okay, sir.
Do you need us to go over those right now?
No, don't. I'm in receipt of the GAO report, and we'll certainly look at those and we'll reply to the committee.
So to the best of your knowledge, you don't know whether or not Congress was...
To the best of my knowledge, we have fulfilled all our requirements in the notification of process.
So Congress was informed?
As far as I know, sir.
Okay. Mr. Hackstrom, does VA believe that their obligations for payment of construction completed extends only to the prime contractor?
Mr. Chairman, our contractual relationship is with the prime contractor and only the prime contractor. We do not have privy of contract with the subcontractors. However, as you had mentioned in your opening remarks, that we do require certification of the prime contractor to the VA to ensure that they are paying their subcontractors. When you look at what we do, go through the change order process, the pay application process, all those things are to be resolved with the prime contractor in terms of what payments they are due and the payments that they would subsequently make to their subcontractors. I would like to add that the Miller Act, which was passed in 1935, if you will, is really a safety net for subcontractors. The Miller Act specifically requires that for federal projects over $150,000, that there is both a performance bond and a payment bond that is held by the prime contractor. So that in the event, if the prime contractor has a contractual relationship with that subcontractor for a certain amount, the subcontractor performs the portion of the project for that amount, and the prime contractor does not pay that subcontractor, the subcontractor has recourse against the prime contractor through federal court.
But doesn't current law go above that, go beyond that in the Prompt Payment Act in terms of defining VA's responsibility?
Absolutely,
to ensure that subcontractors
and we adhere to that as closely as we can. Once a month, we have what we call a pay application review with our prime contractor. And during this, the prime contractor will provide to VA the portions of the projects that have been executed between the last pay application meeting and the current pay application meeting. It is our goal and requirement that once we receive that information, to process that and make payment within 15 days to the prime contractor.
Let me just say that I think all of you referred to the VA facility that's being constructed in Denver, and I think that is well within the boundaries of the city of Aurora, which is in my congressional district. And I don't think I think there's been a history of those subcontractors not being paid, and that's of concern to me. Ms. St. James, did contractors submit excessive or unwarranted change orders to drive up cost or delay or cause delay?
That wasn't a central focus of our review. We understood that the committee was looking into that, but in Orlando, we did hear of instances like that, and we're aware of the show cause notice. But we did not verify independently whether or not any of those charges were excessive or unwarranted.
Ranking Member Kirkpatrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. St. James, in our briefing book, we have 4 major hospitals: Las Vegas, Orlando, Denver, and New Orleans. And staff just gave me a list of the Orlando problems with the contracting officer with cure notices, show cause notices, that really have delayed the project. Did you find that that was the case with the other 3 facilities?
I think out of the 4 that we looked at, it was that the relationship between VA and the prime contractor was not as favorable, let's say, as the other contracts that were out there. There seemed to be more problems in Orlando. with the prime contractor than we saw on the other sites.
Thank you. Do you agree with Mr. Kelly's recommendation that they go to an architect design review rather than just, design build, rather than just a regular design build model?
We looked at the different kinds of contracts, as you just mentioned, and quite frankly, if you have your requirements set up and agreed to, and you have a contractor and you have a good relationship with that contractor, it doesn't really matter the vehicle that you choose. A lot of it depends upon the relationships, requirements being defined, relationship between the sub and the prime as well.
And so why is that relationship a problem at the VA?
In Orlando?
In Orlando.
It's a big project. There's lots of change orders. The contractor, when subcontractors put in for the change orders, we saw that the prime would agree with those change orders, but VA would not agree with them. And therefore, you have a disagreement. And when you have a very large project, you have lots of change orders. It's just natural to the construction. So we found that that was a major problem in Orlando, was the viewing of the cost information being provided in the change orders. Neither the contractor did not agree with, neither VA or the contractor agreed.
Thank you. Mr. Hagstrom, on these projects, do you have somebody on the site who can review change orders, who has the authority to approve them rapidly at each one of these facilities?
Yes, Congresswoman, we do. We have a resident engineering staff. We have a project executive. We have contracting officers assigned to all of these projects to help facilitate and move the change order process along.
So how would you explain the bad relationship that apparently exists between the contractor and the VA that ends up with these show cause hearings and orders to cure?
Well, if I could, the show cause and cure notices do not necessarily delay a project. Those are two contracting vehicles that the federal government uses as part of the procurement process to ensure our rights are protected with regard to the contract that was consummated between ourselves and the prime contractor, and oversight and fiduciary responsibility for the money that you have provided us to construct these particular facilities. With regards to the Orlando project, early on in my previous testimony before the committee, clearly VA had some problems in terms of errors and omissions when we started this project. Those errors and omissions were corrected through working with our AE and with our contractor. Those drawings were corrected and put back into place approximately a year ago, and we moved forward on those. There is a continuing, I think, discussion and issue with the prime contractor over the cost of these things, whether or not perhaps the cost that they estimated were underestimated with regards to the subcontractors performing this work. Again, I don't know, but these are all possibilities what drive the relationship between ourselves and that prime contractor.
My time's almost expired, but I'm going to ask one other question, and that is, where does the CRC then fit in the whole scheme of things? So you have somebody on site who can approve the change orders, and then you've got the CRC. So what is their role in terms of direct review and oversight of the construction on the site?
The Secretary has made it very clear when we formed the CRC that certain elements of the project would have to come before the CRC and himself in terms of any change orders, significant change orders that would drastically affect the cost or the schedule of completion.
My time's almost up, but does that delay then the decision on the change orders?
It does not.
I'd yield back my time, but I'd like another round of questioning if we have time.
We'll have a second round. Mr. Juleskamp?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to read what you've read once already from the GAO report. And I'm quoting here, it notes cost increases for these projects range from 59% to 144%, representing a total cost increase of nearly $1.5 billion and an average increase of approximately $366 million per project. The scheduled delays range from 14 to 74 months with an average delay of 35 months per project. And I have a question for Mr. Hagstrom, if I might. And the GAO's report makes clear that for a number of years, and you referenced the 09 report, VA's construction arm has not been doing a good job. Yet, according to the records I have, in 2009, you received a $20,470 bonus. In 2010, you received an $18,022 bonus. And in 2011, you received a $16,300 bonus, all on top of your base pay. Given this GAO report and what we've heard here, do you really think you deserved these bonuses?
Congressman, those bonuses were not determined by myself. Those bonuses were determined by my supervisors and the senior leadership at VA. And with all due respect, I'd ask you to take that up with them.
My question is with you. Do you think you deserve those bonuses in light of these GAO reports and these cost overruns and delays in construction?
Congressman, I believe I've answered your question.
No, sir, let me re-ask it. Do you believe you deserved these bonuses? It's either yes or no, or I refuse to answer the question.
Answer one more time. Those bonuses were not by my own doing. Those were from my superiors. And
did they indicate to you, Mr. Hagstrom, why you deserved these bonuses when they gave them to you?
Congressman, I've answered as far as I'm concerned.
Did they indicate to you why you deserved these bonuses?
No.
Surely they told you. They didn't tell you at all why you were given a $20,000 bonus in 2009, a $18,000 bonus. They didn't tell you why you were given a bonus?
Those bonuses, I presume, were based on my performance plan and my performance that they viewed and how I did my job during those particular years.
I wish you would answer that question. Apparently they didn't tell you then why you deserved a bonus?
No.
They just...
The bonus came down in my paycheck.
Just magically appeared, I guess, for no reason. And I would appreciate, perhaps you might visit with your superiors in light of the GAO report. I mean, we're talking about $1.5 billion of cost overruns on 4 projects. Congress, are you proud of these particular projects?
I am not, but I think you need to put those cost overruns in context.
I'm putting it in a bonus
No, I'm putting it in the fact that when you looked, or when GA looked at these projects, and they costed them out, many of these projects started out as nothing more than large healthcare centers when we started the requirements definition process. Those matured sometimes into full-fledged inpatient medical facilities based on emerging needs. So you've got to look at ultimately what the VA planned to build as opposed in the end.
So the VA, Mr. Hagstrom, the VA for here is you.
Pardon me?
The VA today is you. It wasn't somebody else, some other agency determined what they should be. It was based on your estimates, what you described to Congress of the money you needed for this project. And they come in at an average of $366 million per project cost overrun. And you can't blame it on the DOD made you do these. I mean, these are the VA estimates coming out of the GAO report. And that's what we have here.
VA estimates based on what we started with. Again,
did you have a hand in putting these estimates together?
Care facility. When you move from a healthcare facility of several 100,000 square feet to build a full-fledged medical inpatient care facility at sometimes 1.5 million square feet, you are going to have a change in the cost of that project.
Well, absolutely. Obviously, we're wrong on the first estimate. Obviously, you're going to have a massive change because you made a mistake at the beginning.
But that's
and what bothers me is you're in charge of these. You're the gentleman sent here to represent why this wasn't too bad. And these same folks give you a very, very big bonus multiple years in a row in light of these GAO reports, and you claim not to know why you got a bonus. And that, to me, Mr. Chairman, is very disappointing. Bonuses are not given just because. They're given for performance. And if I was given a bonus here, we'd actually dock your pay. And that's what most of my constituents say. One last thing I want to note, and you might indicate to your superiors as well, I've sent multiple letters to the VA that they've ignored on other budgetary issues. In particular, I sent a letter on September 23rd, 226 days ago, and the VA just says, we don't care what Congress thinks. And that's why you wonder why we get upset when you have cost overruns and you try to explain to us that your estimates initially were wrong, and then you get massive bonuses. This is not a proper way to run an agency, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Holzkamp. Ms. Custer?
Thank you very much, Mr. Hagerstrom. My question is with regard to the change in scope of these projects. What were the factors that led to the change to a more complex facility? Did it have to do with the number of veterans that were coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan and the complexity of their issues? And where in the Veterans Administration is that type of decision-making made?
Certainly. When you look at the requirements that we work to in construction and facilities management are determined by the administrations. Principally, we build for Veterans Health Administration, the medical facilities, and the National Cemetery Administration, our national cemeteries. Those are the folks who provide to us, the engineers, what they require in order to be built. They use multiple factors. They use the demographics. We use the databases that VA has maintained through the year. And all those things are subject to change. Let's take a look, if you will, just at the Denver facility as an example. As we talked before, Denver started out as a outpatient community health center when we started to build that. Then through the years, we went back and forth at the senior level in VA to decide, is it going to be that, or is it going to be an inpatient facility with bed towers, or are we going to use shared facilities with the University of Colorado to handle our inpatient loads?
And was excuse me for interrupting, but was the Congress kept apprised as these decisions were made?
I'm sorry, I can't answer that. I was not a part of VA when those major decisions were being made. When Secretary Shinseki came in, one of the first things he directed as the Secretary of Veterans Affairs is directing us to build a full inpatient medical facility. And that's where I essentially pick up. All those things previous, though, until those decisions are made, you can't design a facility. You may be able to look at pieces of it, but in terms of designing a full medical complex, the relationship of how all these clinics work, the inpatient, the diagnostic and treatment, all those can't be completed until a decision is made on what is going to be the final scope of this facility.
Thank you. I wanted to say I had a tour during our district work period of the VA facility in White River Junction, Vermont. New Hampshire being the only state that doesn't have a full-service VA hospital, but my constituents go to Vermont. And I was very impressed, actually, and I understood the complexity given the age of the building. But one of the things that was particularly impressive was the opening of a new women's health facility. And I just would love to have you comment on the changing types of issues that you're dealing with and some of these issues that are coming back from the Iraq and Afghanistan war in particular.
Certainly, and while I'm not a clinician, our involvement in working with the VA staff, the emerging requirements in healthcare today are so different from what our veterans faced from World War II and Korea and even Vietnam. When you look at today, I believe almost 15% of our armed forces are women. And so years ago when you walked into a VA hospital, you'd probably not find very many facilities that were equipped to handle women veterans and the special needs they have. These are all things that the department is making very focused attention on in terms of modifying and modernizing our facilities to cope with these new requirements. Traumatic brain injury, mental health, post-traumatic stress syndrome. All of those things are, if you will, perhaps they were present in previous conflicts. Sure. It's only now during our last two engagements that these are really coming to the surface and having the clinicians look at how we can better treat our veterans to help overcome these disabilities.
Thank you. And just one quick question. My time is almost up for Ms. St. James. how do you believe the VA can better communicate within their own organization and with contractors to improve upon this process so that we are not facing cost overruns and delays?
In this regard, we noted that in the council, the VA's council construction review, that they plan to take action on this. And basically what is needed is a matrix which indicates who in VA has responsibility for what, so that the contractor knows the direction that they should follow. We did find in Orlando there was confusion there, and the contractor was directed in one case to go ahead and build a room, a part of the facility, and then was later had to actually redesign it. So it's really common sense. When you have a project that is as large and complex as these are, we're talking over 1 million square feet in some of these and 31 acres in some of these facilities, you absolutely must have clear communication.
Thank you very much. I yield back the balance, which I do not have.
Mr. O'Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm interested in the context of the projects that have been highlighted today within the SCIP list, or the Strategic Capital Investment Planning list. And my understanding is there are 3,900 projects that have been identified on that capital list that need to be at some point built in order to fill the gaps in service to our veterans. When these projects go over these many months or these many dollars, what does it do to the projects behind them?
In terms of the time, it has no effect. When you look at, when you say cost overruns, what are we talking about in terms of a cost overrun? When you look at the projects that are under construction today, we are within the appropriated amounts that Congress has provided to us to construct those facilities. And so if a cost overrun could have two different meanings, a cost overrun vis-a-vis what the original project was bid at, and
That's
through
what I'm
the
trying to
change order
get at.
process.
So if you're spending $366 million more than you originally budgeted, where is that money coming from, if not from projects that would have been funded further down the list? Or did you have a contingency of $366 million for that project?
No, there's not a contingency of $366 million. Conceivably, under what you're talking about, if those cost overruns were in fact correct, it would, of course, push the program out to the right, and projects would not be funded as quickly as perhaps we would have liked them to be.
And I see, I'm obviously most concerned about El Paso, the community I represent, and the veterans there, who today have to go to Albuquerque for the nearest full-service veterans hospital, which is a 10-hour round trip. And these are veterans whose service extends as far back as World War II, going for cortisone treatment, for example. And so we desperately, in my opinion, need a full-service VA hospital in El Paso. And I see that we're number 79 on that list, and the 2014 request is $0. A few projects up, there are dollar requests for those projects. So I can't help but read into this that but for these overruns, or whatever the term of art is, for spending more than we originally anticipated, we would have been able to get to these projects sooner. And I don't know, Ms. St. James, if in your analysis of the VA's construction projects, you were able to correlate, these overruns in time and dollars to what it did to our ability to construct other projects further down the list.
No, we really did not look at that. I would hope, though, that VA's implementation of providing better estimates where the design is 35% complete at the time they submit it to you, that you would have a better idea of what the project would cost. And that's what we would hope to see. When VA comes back to you for money with having 35% complete done at the initial asking, you should have a better idea and a better knowledge of how much more it could actually increase. But a lot of things happen that are unanticipated as well. But we are aware of the skip process. It's relatively new, and we have looked at that in the past and within the last couple of years.
And I guess for Mr. Hagstrom again, in El Paso, it seems like we have a number of opportunities for a new VA facility, full-service VA hospital. One is to co-locate it with the new William Beaumont, the DoD active duty hospital, which is moving forward now. Another is to find a partner within the public health community with Texas Tech, for example. What do those opportunities do in shortening construction time and reducing costs when we're co-locating with other facilities? Does that offer a community like El Paso an opportunity to jump up a little bit on the list since we have a partner with whom we can construct that facility with?
Congressman, with all due honesty, that's a very difficult question to answer with regards to how you put it, because there are so many other factors that are taken into consideration when we look at the skip process and the planning and programming. And many of that goes to the demographics of the areas, what the needs of those veterans are, and how they can be best served. If you'd like for me to take that back as a question, I'll certainly be more than happy to do that and try to provide that for the record.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. O'Rourke. Ms. St. James, when we talk about, say, the facility in Aurora, Colorado, and the cost overrun issue and the time delay, it did start out as or I think there was discussion at least of being joint facility, then it was a standalone facility, VA facility. How much did that contribute to the cost overruns or to the delay? But I understand, obviously, when it went to bid, it was sent out to bid as a standalone facility. I don't think it was sent out to bid as a joint facility. So I don't know how you could contribute that as it was contributed to the cost overruns.
That's actually a good question. There are 4 cycles, I guess, from beginning to end for a construction project. And we look at it from the very beginning, from the planning aspect. And so we felt that if you do not include that planning aspect in looking at how long it takes, then you're not really looking at the full picture of how VA manages this entire process. And in our report, we know that VA really wanted us to look at from the construction point on, but I think you have to realize that the risk is born from the construction, awarding of the construction contract. The risk is on the contractor from that point. Prior to that point, the risk is on VA. So I think their estimates for these projects done decades ago were not done as well as they could have been, which is why they're looking at doing the 35% design to be complete in submitting it to you in the very beginning.
Is that normal to have a certain percentage of the design done before they go out to bid? Because I know that's their practice. Is that also the practice in, say, the private sector?
What we found in that regard is that the VA had actually had an industry forum, and the industry recommended to VA that they have a 35% design complete.
Okay. Mr. Hagstrom, what is it? Now, I understand, first of all, I just want to commend you on putting in our visit to Aurora, Colorado last week at the facility. I think you or somebody associated with you has said that you all 2 months ago put more resources in terms of personnel to process the change orders so that the prime gets paid and hopefully the subcontractors get paid in a more timely manner. And I'll certainly be monitoring that, but I want to commend you on that. But obviously, not having adequate resources on the ground has contributed to these delays. And so where do the other facilities have the same problems that Aurora, Colorado has in terms of the delay in payments and problems with subcontractors?
We experienced that with Orlando, Mr. Chairman, and we took the same steps to remedy that by putting additional resident engineers on staff and construction management support. I believe we certainly have taken our lessons learned from both Orlando and Denver and that we are staffing our project in New Orleans, which is currently on cost and schedule, to make sure that those same issues are not encountered.
Ms. St. James, other facilities of the federal government, I think, are managed by the GSA. Should that be the same case with the VA? Are their practices better? I mean, would the taxpayers and the veterans be better served if, in fact, the process of constructing facilities like healthcare facilities were managed by the GSA instead of the VA?
That's a good question. We actually have not looked at, GSA in doing that, but I know that, again, VA has reached out to GSA in terms of some of its management and the issues that it did identify in the report that we've been referring to that they put out in November 2012. But I can say that when you look at these 4 facilities, it really doesn't matter the type of contract you have, the relationship that exists between a contractor, the prime or the subcontractor. Taking 8 to 10 years to build a facility, at the end of the line is the veteran, and that's where our concern also.
And I just want to say, as a Gulf War veteran and Iraq War veteran, I'm very disappointed. And I think that when there are delays in these projects, and these projects are designed to meet the capacity needs of our veteran population, then I believe, and maybe let me refer to Mr. Kelly, I believe that care is ultimately delayed. Mr. Kelly?
I agree with your statement that care is delayed. I want to commend VA for using the SCIP process. It really does outline what the needs are. They need to put processes in place to be able to achieve those. They understand that demographics change. If they would have used a master planning in the Las Vegas facility, they would have known that adding on to Nellis wasn't going to cut it. They knew the demographics had changed. They knew the medical equipment and the processes that took place needed to change, and they needed a larger facility. So I think having a full master plan at each facility early on would provide them the insight to know when we start this planning process, what do we really need? And then you don't have a small facility turning into a large facility, and you quicker get the access to the veterans.
Mr. Patrick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hagstrom, I have over 20 years experience as a healthcare hospital attorney, and in that time period, we completely remodeled the hospital. Project started and completed. Then we built a huge new addition. That project was started and completed. Then we built a cancer center, and that project was started and completed. In all fairness to you, can you identify differences in your procedure between the private sector and the VA that would explain these huge delays in construction?
Congresswoman, I've never served in the private sector construction industry. My entire almost 40 years in public service has been with Air Force Civil Engineering. I was a civil engineer for 28 years in the Air Force, and subsequently with the Department of Agriculture here and VA. So in all honesty, I am not that familiar with private sector developments and how they go about it. But I will tell you that there are different requirements when you deal with federal contracting. In terms of the contracting process, in terms of the due diligence, in terms of how we do our design and construction laws that have to be applied, perhaps like Davis-Bacon, the Miller Act, all those kinds of things. Those are not necessarily applied in the private sector. When you look at it, I believe when you look at the federal sector and how we complete construction projects, we exercise significantly greater oversight in terms of what our contractors are doing, the quality of what they're doing, and the fact of the matter is just because they tell us there's additional money required to finish this out does not necessarily mean that we will agree with those contractors. And we do our due diligence to ensure that what they're claiming is in fact the truth and the fact that they deserve payment. So there
Well, let
are a
me just
lot of
interrupt you
different-
there. I can tell you in the private sector we do due diligence also, and it doesn't cause these kinds of delays. So I have a big concern about that. But let me switch to a different line of questioning. You mentioned that one of the reasons the Denver project took so long is that the needs of the veterans were changing, and you had to change the scope of the project and the design. But are you doing looking down the road at new delivery systems in healthcare, for instance, using technology? I mean, do we still need these large medical facilities when we're entering an age of telemedicine?
I think that's an excellent point. And Dr. Petzel, who heads Veterans Health Administration, clearly is looking at the various ways of delivery and not necessarily sticking to infrastructure or bricks and mortar, if you will, in terms of care for our veterans. Telemedicine, home telehealth, in-home health care, all those kinds of things I know are on the VHA's plate in order to do better delivery and provide better care for our veterans.
One last question. I'm going to direct this to Mr. Kelly. It seems to me that when you have a 10-year delay in the completion of a project, by the time that project is complete, it's already obsolete. Do you see that in what you've investigated? Do you see the VA trying to come back to Congress asking for authorization to then remodel these facilities that have been 10 years in the construction?
I don't know if a facility becomes obsolete. I do know that the demographics change, that veterans have an expectation when VA comes out into the community and says, we're going to build a facility, this is what we're going to build, and here's the timeline we're going to build it. Now the veterans are invested in this. They are waiting. They've marked their calendar. And when that doesn't come through, they start getting very, very anxious. Are we not going to get our hospital? Is it going to have the full services that we were promised? Where am I going to get my medical care now that the population has grown? The wait lines are getting longer where I'm at. I have to travel further to receive this care. I have to do contract care with a doctor I don't know. So there are a lot of implications. I don't know if it necessarily makes a facility obsolete, but it quicker delivery would provide better care to our service members and veterans.
No question about it. Delayed care is denied care. I thank the panel, and I thank the chairman for having this hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Custer. Ms. Custer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I, too, thank you for having this hearing. I think it's an important topic, anything that we can do to meet the needs of the veterans. But I also can appreciate the complexity in the healthcare delivery model throughout. And my experience, 25 years in the private sector on the legal side with healthcare delivery, is that it is far more complex now than it certainly was. My question is along the lines of Representative O'Rourke in terms of those who are waiting for facilities. And I'm looking at much, much smaller facilities. I don't represent an urban area. I represent a very rural area in New Hampshire. We also have long distances to travel, mountains and weather and such. And so what we're looking at is a much smaller clinic model. And I'm just wondering, this is just a question as to how you build facilities. Do these big projects hold up a small clinic in a rural area?
I don't believe so, because the way the appropriation is structured and the way you provide us resources comes down in two different programs. Well, actually several different programs, but the two that focus on construction is the major construction program, which are facilities at $10 million or greater.
Right.
Those are line item appropriations where it very specifically says, we will build X at Y. When you look at the minor construction program, that is an appropriation. It is not a line item appropriation. And so it's much more flexible in terms of responding to the needs of our veterans and where those monies are placed to meet those critical needs. When you look at the third scenario, and one that we have relied on very heavily, and that is usually with our community-based outpatient clinics and our healthcare facilities, we use a build-to-suit model. And there are several breakpoints in that leasing process, if you will. The clear break point being that if we have an annual rent in excess of $1 million, we must attain approval from the committee to move forward with that. For less than $1 million unserviced rent during the course of a year, the Secretary has the authority to make those decisions for those facilities. So when you look at it, because when we do a build-to-suit model in putting these facilities on the ground, those leasing costs are borne by the medical facilities accounts or through the annual appropriations process.
Trust me, where I'm talking about, the rent will be significantly less than $1 million. So, and my other question, and if you have this information, or if not, if you could get back to the committee, I'm very focused on serving women veterans, and in particular, those who have experienced military sexual trauma or assault. And I was so impressed by this White River Junction facility with a separate facility for women, separate entrance, and very, very well thought through with a task force that included veterans in the planning and the architecture and the design to make women feel safer when they come to the hospital for treatment. Do you know, or any of the panel members, the number of facilities or the percentage of facilities nationwide that are now equipped to deal with the increasing numbers of women veterans separately from being mixed in the general population?
Right off the top of my head, I don't, but I'd be happy to take that question and get the answer for you as a matter of record.
Yeah, I would be very interested. And also, just as my time winds down, just for planning purposes, looking forward, whether that's something that's being included in the planning. And I see you nodding your head if you'd like to respond.
Yes, it is, Congresswoman. I recently attended my first SCIP board meeting and was introduced to the process. And among the very many large number of projects and plans that were presented by the various medical centers and Veterans Integrated Service networks, there was specific reference in several cases, in numerous cases, to the specific needs of women veterans, and they are considering that in their planning and in their programming going forward.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I yield back my 2 seconds.
Mr. O'Rourke.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly offered some suggestions to address some of the findings made by Ms. St. James and the GAO, and I wonder, Mr. Hagstrom, if you could give us your thoughts or your reaction to his suggestions.
Certainly. I fully agree that medical planners are a crucial part of these large projects, and we have already taken steps to include professional medical planners on both the Denver and the New Orleans project. So we are moving forward with that. With regards to ECMS, ECMS is a contract writing system. It's not a program management system. So we are in the process of fielding a new program management system which is specifically tailored to manage construction projects. What we will do, though, is look to interface the contract writing system with the program management system so that we do have a seamless process for a contractual record and all the change orders or what goes on a project. When you look at an AE-led design build, to be honest with you, I have never been involved in a project with an AE design build. But when we looked at it and we talked about it because we did see that you mentioned it, we'll take a look at it. But one of our initial reactions was bonding capacity of the AE firms. So that could be somewhat problematic in terms of who is the lead, the bonding capacity that that particular firm may be able to attain, where typically you would probably see a much larger bonding capacity on the construction side as opposed to on the AE. So, but these are all things that we'll certainly take a look at.
I appreciate that. We in our office would be interested in hearing your answers to the specific recommendations made by Mr. Kelly. And then I want to follow up on something that Congresswoman Custer brought up, and I tried to address in my earlier questions, but essentially learning from what has gone less than ideally, I guess, in some of these projects that have been highlighted in this report. What can communities like ours who need new facilities and need investment from the VA to serve veterans who currently are not able to get service in our communities and have to travel for that service, what can we do to improve that process, whether it's through co-location, and I talked about DOD, or through a university system, whether it's providing land and leasing opportunities. Give us some guidance and I'll pass on how we can partner with you to be able to service these veterans who aren't getting that service today.
I think the things that you said are very relative to looking at the future needs. I know VHA, we're in many, many communities across the United States. Sit down, talk with your medical center directors, talk about the requirements that you need in your community, make sure they're aware of those things, and those things can be put forth as we go into the planning and programming process. They can come up through the SCIP process, all those kinds of things. So I think you're on the right track. I will tell you, as you noted, the number of projects that are in the queue as requirements, there is a substantial list, and certainly as part of the SCIP process, we do our best to ensure that the most critical needs that serve our veterans are first in the queue to make sure that they happen.
And are the criteria you use to determine ranking within that SCIP process, are those published along with?
They would. In fact, I would like to ask Ms. Fiotis. She can go through that, having just
That'd be great.
been on the SCIP process. She is a board member, so she participates in that planning process.
Thank you for the opportunity. Actually, the criteria are very well defined, and the entire process is very deliberative, comprehensive, and integrated. And it starts with a 10-year planning horizon where all the VISNs, the networks, present their gaps and their proposals how to address these gaps. And by the way, in many cases, they also talk about non-capital ways to address the gaps, which goes to the Congresswoman's question earlier about other than just building facilities solutions.
And those come from the local VHA directors or the regional?
They come from what we call the Veterans Integrated Service Networks. There are 23, I believe, across the country, and those plans are presented to the SCIP board. Along with this 10-year planning horizon, we then do, subject matter experts then do a review of the proposed projects and the business cases for those projects, and this forms the basis for the annual budget request. So we go from the 10-year horizon to what should we be looking at for the upcoming year. The criteria, to get to your initial question, again, are defined and are used for the ranking. It includes improving safety and security, fixing what we already have, increasing access to veterans, right-sizing the inventory, ensuring the value of the investment, then of course the department's initiatives. So and each criterion has sub-criteria that, again, the entire process is data-driven to allow us to do the most objective assessment and prioritization.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We'll do one last round for anybody that has any clean-up questions. Mr. Hagstrom, I think you mentioned the electronic contract management system, and tell me what that's supposed to do again.
The ECMS, or Electronic Contract Management System, is a contract writing tool that we use in VA to put in place the various contracts, whether they be service contracts, construction contracts, or commodity contracts. They're used by the contracting workforce to do this, and what it does is it is an electronic repository for the contract files in terms of what the terms and conditions are, the standard clauses are, what the costs are, when it's gone out to bid, what those bids were, all those kinds of things. It's the electronic file for our contracts.
This is designed to make the system more efficient?
It is designed to make the contracting workforce more productive. It gets us out of the paper business. It's transportable so that multiple contracting officers can use the same file at different times. We can do our risk assessments electronically as opposed to having to go out to the contracting offices and look at the paper copies. So it's what we're moving to in the department in terms of our contracting records.
Ms. St. James, is that system being utilized by VA?
I'm sorry, say again?
Is the electronic contract management system being currently utilized, to your knowledge?
That is a recommendation that, again, is coming out of their report, and I would wholeheartedly push VA to do that, particularly when we were asking questions about the change orders and how long things were taking. They couldn't really tell us there was no system to do that. So for accountability and for tracking and for metrics, it certainly is something that I think needs to be done.
So it's not being currently used?
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, it is being used. When you look at the contracts that we're putting in place, the vast majority of all the new contracts are in fact going through the electronic contracting system and into the federal procurement data system.
I'm for the 4 that we looked at as well.
Yes.
Okay. We just know that for the change orders, we couldn't get that information easily. There was no real good system in order to give that to
Mr.
us.
Hackstrom, how long has this system been in place and been used? Apparently there was a mandate in 2007.
That's correct.
For this system. How long has it been utilized now?
I believe the system was established, it was prior to my arriving there, back around 2006 or so. It was not well received. Our OIG did an audit on the usage of the system. At that particular time, it was down in the low 40s, the percentage, even lower than that. Through the years, this is one of the metrics that we track internally to the goal, and I believe we're now up in the high 70s to mid 80% usage of the electronic contract writings.
Isn't this a mandate by Congress? I mean,
No, this is a mandate of the department, sir.
It's a mandate and you put out a memo 2 years ago for everybody to use it, and not everybody's using it now?
There are pockets of folks that still have not fully developed their contracts within the system. We go through, we find those, we provide education, we provide learning engagement.
Well, I mean, you were in the United States Air Force. I mean, you gave out a mandate. I mean, you put a memo. We've got a copy of the memo 2 years ago that said everybody's got to use this system, and you're saying now people decide whether or not they want to use it. That's under your leadership? You're saying that that's the way things work?
There are cases where people have not used the system to the full capability that they should be using it to. We go out, we do audit reviews, we find those, we talk with the heads of the contracting agency. There is a hierarchy within the department from me as the acting chief acquisition officer to the heads of contracting authority within the various administrations and or staff offices. These are the people that need to enforce through their leadership the use of these. I do not have administrative authority over all of the people who do contracting in the department. I just have functional authority.
Well, maybe it sounds like you've got a real organizational problem. If you've got a system that's designed, if you're, the problem is you've got delays, you've got cost overruns, system isn't working, you're not utilizing a system that is designed to make it work. You're not able, in your position, to get people to use the very system that Congress mandated in 2007. I think that's problematic. Mr. Hackstrom, on another issue, is VA requiring surety bonds on construction contracts currently?
Yes, they do.
Okay. Why is the VA making what appears to be arbitrary last-minute cuts to monthly payments to the prime contractor, who then passes the cuts down to subcontractors?
It would be helpful to have a specific issue that surrounds, but that could range from the work was not performed.
Specifically to Aurora, Colorado.
In those particular cases, we have encountered areas where the work was in fact not performed but was being asked payment for. We found that in some cases the work was performed years prior and the time for the request for those change orders and payments had been exceeded. And we've also found that in Colorado there is a request for payment above what the budgeted cost. But what that is absent of is any rationale of why it was budgeted at X dollars and now why it's at Y dollars. The contract that we have in place is not a cost-plus contract. It is a firm target price contract where the contractor is to adhere to those budgeted amounts. In the case where there is clearly a reason, such as a change in scope or complexity or something like that, they are well within our rights to submit those changes to the VA, and we will respond to them. And if they are due additional payments, we will make those based on what our government cost estimate is.
Why is the VA pushing the prime and subcontractors in what project would this be? In Aurora, Colorado, to complete work without an approved change order?
Congressman, over the past 2 months, we just sat down with Hewitt Turner and worked to resolve 111 change orders that Hewitt Turner provided to us as the greatest needs to come to resolution on. That was completed back in mid-April. As a result of that, VA has issued to Hewitt Turner $4 million in change orders that Hewitt Turner can now invoice the VA for payment.
I'll take a look at that. Mr. Kelly, does the VFW conduct any field work to evaluate VA's construction program?
No, we do not.
Very well. Ms. Kirkpatrick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to follow up on your line of questioning regarding the change orders. It appears that the CRC made a recommendation, they actually looked at the process for change orders, and they made a recommendation that the VA examine the authority levels of contracting officers in the field to execute change orders without additional reviews, and that the VA consider support for hiring 3 additional attorneys to review change orders. Mr. Hagstrom, where are we in terms of those recommendations?
The authority for the change orders for the contracting officers in the field has been increased to $250,000 per change order. That is in effect. And we are working with our general counsel to hire 4 additional attorneys that we would be dedicated to helping us manage the contractual requirements required by these large contracts.
And my last question is, does SCIP apply to these 4 major projects that we're looking at in Las Vegas, Denver, Orlando, and New Orleans?
They do not. This is pre-SCIP.
And why is that?
SCIP was, I guess, not envisioned when we started the planning and programming and ultimately requesting funds for these projects. It was not until FY 2012 that the SCIP came into being. All these projects were developed and appropriations requested prior to then.
Mr. Killay, would the processes in SCIP help speed up completion of these projects?
Appropriations at a level that would fund these would speed up the process. I think SCIP can be used for part of the planning, but as soon as the contract is written, then that's where the delays begin, in my opinion. There's some delay in the planning of that because I think there's some long-term master planning that needs to happen that would allow them to have a better understanding prior to planning. But SCIP lays out some of that. I think they could go in a little deeper, but I don't think that SCIP is the process of determining need affects the way the contracts are in the end are done or completed.
Ms. St. James, could you prioritize for us the top 3 things that you need to, changes that you think the VA needs to make to speed up completion of these projects?
Well, we made 3 recommendations in our report that really were systemic issues throughout, and one of them was on the medical planners. You absolutely need the medical planners to be involved up front and to have guidance on when they should be used, and particularly in these very large, complex medical facilities. The communication, that needs to be clearly laid out so that you don't have delays in what the contractor understands that they need to do. And then the change order process. That change order process was really systemic throughout. And when you have delays, sometimes up to 6 months, it doesn't work well. And if they don't get the process changed with the change orders and streamline that, then you're going to continue to see delays, and that's within the construction. VA needs to get their planning to go away from, and I understand that they are, from rough orders of magnitude and giving Congress what they think they need. They need to put that planning effort up front, which I believe they're trying to do, and then to manage that construction process, including correcting the change order.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. My thanks to the panel. You are now excused. The obstacles facing VA construction are disheartening, but I look forward to working with the VA to improve its construction practices, to create a system that is both fair to the veterans who have served this country and to the taxpayers who foot the bill. With that, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend the remarks and include extraneous material. Without objection, so ordered. I want to thank all members and witnesses for their participation in today's hearing. This hearing is now adjourned.
Bye.